Hello, welcome, Layer1Live. You guys know what it is. This is another week. Obviously, we got to bring you the hard-hitting news. We got to talk to the community, see what you guys are up to today. We got Dimitri back home. Looks like New York's doing well behind you. Guys, happy 4th as well. We missed you guys yesterday, but obviously, I hope you guys had a good 4th weekend. We got a packed episode today. We got to get to a lot of community news. We got Celsius kind of under fire. Mashinsky's taking a little hit, but we appreciate everybody joining early on in this episode. What's going on, Dima?
Yeah, man, I'm back in town, back in Pittsburgh, even though it's New York in the background. But yeah, I was, visiting New Jersey, visiting my family, spending some time there over 4th of July weekend. Getting some tan. Grilling a lot of food. So it was overall good times. And, I just arrived today, so I'm a little bit jet lagged. So,
Yep.
But we do have packed episode with some good stuff. So passion will prevail. All the, all
show them what you're drinking too. You gotta show them that.
Yeah, I got a little can of G Fuel, for those gamers out there. Yeah, this thing is. It's going to kick in probably mid-episode, and I'm just going to start talking nonstop.
I'll make sure to stop you guys. If you are in the channel as well, if Dimitri starts to ramble, let us know. Also, if the volume, guys, obviously we have some housekeeping. So if the volume is like struggling or something like that, please let us know early in the episode. I don't have Mike here today, obviously, so we're going to have to be on point, us two. Mike is somewhere in the middle of PA at some country club. I'm assuming, enjoying
playing golf.
Yeah, playing a little golf, struggling at golf. Hopefully he stops by Layer 1. We got some comments, guys. We got Paul saying second, River saying first. Kieran is in the chat. Scott is in the chat. Scott says, "Yo, happy 4th." And then Paul and Kieran are talking about Celsius as the juggernaut. Looks like Mashinsky has some good supporters in the channel. So we have, like I said, we got a good episode. We're going to get to some community points right now. Guys, if you see I got a little bang on the chin, Dimitri pointed this out. I almost forgot about it. But I was doing tubing on the 4th of July and really got banged up. So this is not anything life-threatening, but we do have a little bit of a cut over.
Q took it on the chin,
Yeah, there you go. I always do. I'm getting this out on Twitter right now, but let me get to the stats, guys. We updated the stat cards too. I hope you like them. We got top 5 countries from this week. We got US, UK, Canada, Denmark, and Australia. So Germany kind of fell out there. Where's all my Rhineland guys at? Top 3 episodes by views and listens. We had that episode with you and Mike, as well as Galen, one of the lads. He's talking DeFi. We got number 2. We got Animoca Brands with Yatsui talking virtual assets, and number 3 we were talking inter-blockchain connectivity and Cosmos with Zaki and Dean. So go check those episodes out, guys. If you want to help support us too, please like and subscribe. You guys are doing an awesome job, man, just adding to our content. We want to give a shout out to the lads. Obviously, you guys are killing it, but also the people who, the community members who maybe are just, been a active listener and viewer, since Layer 1 started, or even, months, weeks. We appreciate you guys kind of consistently viewing and listening. You guys are lads in our book, obviously. So, but if you want to join the lads, there's a Telegram link as well that you can look at in the description. So that's pretty much it. I'm going to get to one last thing. Dimitri is still at 0 with our Bitcoin stakes. I'm going to pull this up on the screen so you can look at it. But basically I'm going to show the rules here. But basically every month we're doing a Bitcoin stakes with the lads in our community. And you choose the price of Bitcoin, at least a range. The weekly winners will move up 1 spot. And at the end of the month, the winner or winners will split BTC. So up to this point, I think we're at week 3, yeah?
Yeah.
Are we at week 3? Yeah, we're at week 3. I'll show you a little bit of what we got. So this week we had 3 winners. We had Q, myself. We had Zach Lee, who actually pulled up in front and is currently the leader, and ODOT kind of picking that accurate range. We had that nice little pump up to 92.50, and the price at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time was 9252. So that group picked the range of 9200 or 9250 to 9500. They've moved up at the end of the month. It looks like Zach Lee might be taking home some Bitcoin. What do you think about that?
Yeah, man. It's crazy how it actually came down to the wire, like to the seconds. We were just like talking in group chat. I mean, not for my prediction. My prediction was, off. Obviously, I had no chance there unless we gapped down 5% within 3 minutes.
Yeah.
It was right, was it above 92.50 or below? It was it's interesting, but it's a cool, fun experience.
Yeah, I can only imagine it's going to get more and more crazy so right now Layer 1's kind of subsidizing that reward, right? So at the end of the month, Zach Lee or someone else, let's see, will take home $50 worth of BTC. But in the future, what we'd really like to do is get a pool together, kind of like fantasy football, where at the beginning everyone's putting maybe $10, and then at the end someone has a chance to win some big money. So hopefully at the end of this month, we'll start this up again, and we'll start getting the pools there from the lads. But Shun's in the chat. What's going on, Shun? We're just starting up here. We're getting to all of the housekeeping. I think that's pretty much it, man. So are you ready to go?
Yeah, let's hit it, man. Breaking news.
All right, breaking news, man. The simulation is broken. Kanye West and Brock Pierce are now running for president. I don't know which one's crazier, to be honest. I think Kanye's is obviously a little more pressing, especially to the Democratic Party. But Brock Pierce's is really cool, man. I don't know if for all of you following along, you've got the description there. It's got all the links we're going to talk about. But Brock Pierce's is really cool. He's walking. He's doing that thing where he's continuously walking and the camera's panning to him, and he's talking about how the U.S. is gonna be this great country, and through AI and all in entrepreneurial spirit, how he's gonna change the country. It's a great video, to be honest. Mm-hmm. I like Brock. I think he's a very Andrew Yang-esque. Obviously, he's gonna be that entrepreneurial candidate. He has zero shot to be president, but he's using some of those Block 1 funds to, I guess, good use. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Obviously, he's running as an independent. I didn't really read much about his his proposals and stuff. I didn't watch that video. I need to watch that. It sounds like fun. But in the end, I mean, Kanye, and then you have Brock Pierce. What's his slogan? Is
it's Brock the vote.
Yeah, Brock the vote. Yeah.
Brock the vote. Let's go. He's got. Go ahead.
So yeah, I mean, it's as far as the marketing goes, you just throw something out like this on crypto Twitter, it just gets so much attention. So, and from a PR perspective, that's marketing, for Kanye as well. I don't think he wants to be a president, but this stuff, when it's I saw a bunch of tweets that some other people were saying that they're gonna run for president too. It's kind of becoming a meme now,
At this point, yeah, why not? I feel like people almost do it for the recognition, right? That's almost like what Bloomberg was doing when he was running, although he definitely had a chance. But Kanye's got a real... I said that piece about Joe Biden because I feel like Kanye has a real chance to kind of divide the Democratic Party a little bit. I think, Biden's looking, obviously, to get a majority of the African-American vote. And obviously Kanye West is a leader in that community. So if he kind of divides the Democratic Party, it's will Trump walk in and be able to capitalize there? Which I mean, there's even in that picture of them together, right? High-fiving at the White House. So who knows, man? Let us know what you guys think about Kanye West and Brock Pierce kind of running for president here. But
that's pretty wild.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how we bring that back to crypto, right? It is just a wild story, so we had to put it in there. Brock Pierce is certainly... It's funny, dude. Brock Pierce turned into Ulysses S. Grant overnight. Did you see his picture on the... Yeah, it's he went from the hat and feather... and the chains to like looking like literally Ulysses S. Grant. 1-2's in the chat. What's up, lads? What's going on, man? We appreciate you coming in here. So we're gonna get right to it. We're obviously still in breaking news. Dimitri, you hit me with a link this morning, something to do with Brazil and Binance. What's going on?
Yeah, it was interesting. So I was getting off the plane, and this just came out, and saying Brazil regulators blocked Binance from offering derivatives in the country. So it's an interesting outcome where, I mean, essentially, Binance obviously does provide the services to Brazil. Brazilian traders can or could trade derivatives and spot. But now looks like the regulators from Brazil are coming out and saying, hey, listen, you no longer can offer derivatives to Brazilian customers, but they can still trade spot, right? So spot is still available. It's just the derivatives that are not going to be available for Brazilians. And they came down pretty harsh in terms of like if they do continue to operate. For each order and each day, they have to pay like a certain amount, which is like about it's like $188. But if you calculate like how many orders, how many users every day, like that can escalate to a lot, if they continue to operate like that. So the one thing that kind of strikes me first is like, okay, wait a minute. So if they're shutting down derivatives trading, maybe those traders will have to unwind their positions, right? So maybe Binance will have to close out some positions for those traders that do hold derivatives from Brazil. So it's interesting to see because this came out today, and obviously today is a very green day for Bitcoin. So maybe the Brazilians were short Bitcoin and they're covering, but it is interesting to see how the regulators chose to ban derivatives. Maybe the concern is just because like the leverage and the volatility of the asset can kind of negatively impact the Brazilians, where they might not understand how the product works, and it's too much risk.
It's interesting, and I want to get your take on this. Why Brazil? Right? There's regulation commissions everywhere in the entire world, and there's definitely countries that are on that same level as far as kind of GDP or what have you. And why did the Brazilian Securities Exchange Commission decide, hey, we're doing this, right? And obviously that's offered in other countries.
Yeah, it's interesting because they're obviously targeting Binance here. So, and we know Binance has been very good with regulators kind of everywhere. In India, by acquiring that exchange that they have there in India now, and they were actually pretty much the sole purpose why India pretty much unbanned crypto. So Binance does have like a pretty big influence, which is interesting to see that Brazil is like pushing back on them. Maybe Brazil is looking to maybe control the capital, or maybe Brazil, as far as the economy goes, it's obviously not in a great shape, right? So but also at the same time, maybe Brazil is trying to work out and set up their own exchange, right? Or something something where you would have to go through them rather than Binance. So it's interesting to see how that's going to work out. But the main thing is that spot is still going to be available. It's just the leverage products that are not going to be used. And also at the same time, like if you really think about it, a lot of people are still going to start using VPNs and so on, right? Yeah. So but it might have like a small effect, in general. It just makes it a little bit difficult for those people to use maybe derivatives if they want to from Brazil. But it is interesting that happened, right? And like everybody's like, what?
Yeah, I guess we always have the discussion on Bitcoin in different cryptocurrencies, and just I wouldn't call Brazil a distressed country by any means, but just in these other kind of countries around the world, and I guess this affecting the derivatives market and derivatives trading in the country doesn't really hurt like the adoption of crypto in that country as much as maybe just banning like spot trading of Bitcoin.
Right. Exactly. So, yeah. It's not that big of a deal. One thing that just in relation to trading is to see if there's any ripple effect that's going to happen, if Binance is going to have to close out some of these accounts, orders, and so on, which will ripple out into the market. But maybe that, is kind of minimized.
Gotcha. All right. Well, that's our breaking news for the day. Obviously, the Kanye and Brock Pierce story is interesting, and we're having some people talk about it in the chat. Paul says Kanye West is not a leader in the black community. Shun says, I think many people don't know who to vote for anymore this year. Kanye may affect the election, and Paul says black people are not voting for Kanye. So at the risk of making this a political podcast or show, we can kind of dive into that a little bit. That is an interesting comment, and Paul, I definitely would like to see like your thoughts on why you believe maybe Kanye isn't a leader in the black community. I feel like just from the general news and kind of the cultural influence that he's had, not only on music but apparel, is obviously one big thing, and the black community is heavily involved in both of those sectors, if you would call it industries. So I'm interested to hear your thoughts there. Shun, I probably would agree with you. I don't know, Dimitri, if you want to take this, but he's saying, I think many people don't know who to vote for anymore this year. Kanye may affect the election. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people are really unsure. There's just so much noise and, I want to say like distrust and so on, right? That's going on right now. That's confusing people. And most of them probably not going to even vote, just because of that, which is kind of it's a more concerning subject, where it's like, if you have the population of your country start, kind of like not trusting the government, and, then it's kind of hard to make the country kind of efficient in terms of like, voting and so on, right? So really, I think the biggest risk is not like, like who's running, but it's just, I think the biggest risk is that, if we continue to drift away from trusting the government and authorities that are running the way things are, then, I think the progress will, like, overall will be tainted. And I think that's really the bigger problem.
Yeah, America's got a lot of issues up until this point, but I know there's a ton of people listening all across the world that are also, seeing issues in their own country. So definitely a divisive time in the country, though. So 2020 is doing its best to kind of break almost everybody. So, but anyways, that's pretty much all of the breaking news that we had. 1-2 is saying Morgan Freeman for president.
Dude, I would vote for Morgan Freeman any day, bro. You serious?
Yeah, I would do that as well. I've always found Morgan Freeman to be a upstanding individual. So we're gonna get into the quick news. Me and Dimitri both have 2 pieces of quick news, but I did want to get to the chat here. It looks like Brandon's in the chat as well. He says, "Sup, lads? Good to see you in the chat, Brandon." A couple other comments we had. I guess we had talk on. I guess we had talk on Celsius earlier. We're going to get to the Celsius part of the discussion here after this quick news, so that should be a good time. Guys, we have today, if you look to your left, breaking discussion. We're talking Ethereum, we're talking EOS and Voice, we're talking DeFi, and then NFTs today. But we have a lot of regulars in the chat. We got a lot of lads in the chat. So if you guys want to drop comments and topics that you want us to touch on, I'm sure we'll be able to hit that. We love when you guys kind of drop those things for us to talk about mid-episode. That they often lead to the best discussions. Shun says Kanye supports BTC. Many crypto holders will vote for him. So that will be an ongoing discussion. We'll see. Hopefully we have some more Layer1Lives where we can discuss Kanye. So we're gonna hit quick news really quick, guys, and then we'll go into discussion.
Yep. So let's kick off. So there was some chatter about basically some hacks or vulnerability in Bitcoin wallets that the community was kind of pointing out to. And so the fix was issued for a serious Bitcoin wallet security threat. This article specifically talks about, so there's instances when you basically send BTC or crypto, to your wallet, and then it shows up in a wallet, but the transaction is still pending. Basically, it's not, it didn't go through enough confirmations. Went through like maybe 2 confirmations or so. So the exploit there is basically saying that if a scammer sends you BTC, And then essentially, you see it in your wallet, but there's only 2 confirmations that happen. And then what they can do is the scammer can send another transaction and pay a bigger fee to front run, the transaction that he did earlier and reverse it basically. So this way, like, even though you saw the BTC in your wallet, it actually, was not there completely. And then, once the confirmations go through, that actual wallet, then becomes zero, right? And then it's like, well, that's a serious issue, because then, people can be scammed this way, right? So, so people find out about this, and essentially, it was specifically Zengo, I think, advocating for it, brought it up, and the fix essentially came out. It was it Ledger, Edge, and BRD
Brad,
have updated and fixed the issues. So we are saved. That's good that they caught this. But of course, given where we are in the industry, scammers will always try to find ways to scam you of BTC or crypto. With these simple vulnerabilities where it's like a display issue and so on, right? So this is the reason why exchanges have like a specific amount of confirmations that you need to get before you actually get the balance in your wallet on the exchange. There's a reason why you wait for that long to actually display it, but looks like that display issue has been kind of resolved, because can you imagine being scammed like that? Like, I would be very upset.
Yeah, if you got $10,000 to $15,000 in there and it shows up as zero in that display column, it could definitely be worrisome for a lot of people. So, yeah. Good call.
So, yep, that's that. And then the next piece of news is you. This one is great. This one is about Venezuela. So, basically, Maduro, which is still thinks he's the president of Venezuela. He hit up UK bank, and was Bank of England, and was like, hey, listen, I'm gonna need to cash out that gold that we've been storing with you guys. It's, I believe it's like 1 billion there in dollars worth of gold. And Bank of England was like, well, I don't know about that. The UK High Court basically denied his request. He was saying that, well, we need these funds to battle corona virus, and they would really help people and all that stuff, but kind of given the credibility of Maduro in the past, this guy is involved in some shady stuff always. So
yeah,
the self-proclaimed president of Venezuela, which is Juan Guaido, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right, but he basically warned, saying that Maduro is not going to spend these funds in the right way, where it's not going to benefit people. He's just going to scheme. So basically, it puts the weird situation where it's like, well, Venezuela is kind of on the brink of just collapsing, and then like now we have to figure out, well, who's going to claim the gold, right? That's been stashed for Venezuela. And who's going to be the right person who's going to apply that gold in the best interest of the people of Venezuela, and all that bureaucracy and all this work that has to be done to kind of figure out how to release it to Venezuela is taking a lot of time. And during that time, obviously Venezuela is not doing well, and they need maybe that money as soon as possible. So it's pretty sad to see this, something like this, but basically, this kind of goes into crypto, where, well, many of the regimes that are struggling and don't have access to, let's say, to global financial system because of sanctions. Like some of them are not really that good, like North Korea, for example. They continue to mine Bitcoin and continue to mine Monero and privacy coins. This is much better for them in terms of they can recall those assets at any time. It's not like going to be like, if I store gold physical, in a different country and I'm under sanctions, now I can't get my money back, because I'm under sanctions. So this is why, like, kind of the Bitcoin and crypto for those, places tends to be more valuable than actually using gold.
Yeah, it's interesting. This is one of the first times I've heard of like not your keys, not your Bitcoin,
Yeah.
or not your gold, obviously, that happens to an actual like nation, right?
Right.
First of all, why is there no security enough in that country where the gold can be stored inside Venezuela? Obviously, we know the situation and the destabilization that's happening, but it's interesting that the Bank of England has this gold,
Yeah.
and is custodying this gold for them. I wonder how widespread that is. I don't know. Obviously, that's not my realm of knowledge. But do you have any insight on that?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, custody like is done all the time. For like let's say U.S. custody a lot of gold for other countries. Actually, I think Germany did recall their gold from U.S. Not a while back. So uh, it's common practice. It's for security. Well respected like countries that can secure keep the gold safe basically.
Mm.
So it's a common practice, but overall now is kind of given where the global economy is in general. A lot of these countries are starting to be like, hey, listen, I need to cash in,
Yeah.
dip my hands in that, in that bank account that I have with you. But the sad part is that sometimes, those countries actually find out that like, well, maybe some of those reserves are not there anymore, or like,
Mm-hmm.
it's like uh, the the gold has been sold and bought through different various contracts and so on. So this is why kind of like Germany decided to get their gold out and like, listen, if we're gonna hit like the fan in terms of global slowdown, then we want to have the chips right, ready in case we need to deploy it and not go through like, let's say, any type of hiccups, like, or maybe the gold is not there anymore, maybe it was moved, or maybe
Yeah.
the court is stopping me from getting my money out, like let's be real.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where that goes going forward. I wonder if a lot of, like Kieran's saying, a lot of second and third rate powers use large countries to custody their reserves. It'll be interesting to see if that trend increases now that we see the Bank of England saying, "Not your vault, not your gold." So we we appreciate everyone hopping in the chat here. We're on quick news and we're jumping into discussion. I cannot wait to get Dimitri's take on this Celsius situation, and as well as your guys' take. This is a developing situation here with Mashinsky and what they're doing, CeFi on DeFi essentially. So I'm gonna really hit this quick news quickly. So I'm true to its name. So I've got crypto custodian Curv raising 23 million in Series A funding. So I guess they had a raise. Commerce Ventures, Coinbase Ventures, and Digital Currency Group all got together and basically said, "Hey, we think this is the next crypto custody infrastructure play," and they've given or they've invested 23 million. Into Curv. So this is going to be an interesting thing going forward. I think Curv doesn't have a token up to this point, but I think they were planning on rolling out a Curv token. So maybe you see the next Compound here. Maybe you see the next Lend and Aave. So basically what Curv provides is a custody solution to these big, large firms. One of the interesting things about this article that I'm going to highlight here is that they use multi-party computation. So I guess this is just another way to have multi-sig, and they say it's better than multi-signature technology as far as decentralizing and making sure that you have security of your assets. But it says it's better than multi-signature technology since it generates random key shares instead of fixed private keys. They go on to say that their technology helps save gas fees, so 60 to 70% in transaction fees when they switch to this multi-signature technology. Bunch of other things as you go into this article, but it looks like, I mean, up to this point, it's about 30 million into Curv. So I wonder just how far we go down this rabbit hole of this rabbit hole of crypto and custody solutions. Obviously, you guys had that big talk with Galen, that interview that we had last week, and he was talking about how institutions, the infrastructure is kind of laid down now for them to kind of get in. Obviously, Curv is a big part of that. So, yeah, you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah. I was gonna say that interview with Galen was great. I highly recommend listening to it. He, gave his perspective on side, from China's side, and also like you mentioned the custody side, because the whole debate is basically, well, if you're gonna custody all like crypto or Bitcoin, then it's kind of centralized, and then where's the gold? Like you run into a situation like that. So, but it was interesting because obviously institutional players are not going to get in if
Mm-hmm.
there's no sophisticated custody. So I think overall, more custody is better to have, because that's going to provide those on ramps for institutions to operate legally, right, within the framework that we have right now. So
Yeah, one of the biggest clients they have as well is going to be eToro. So the eToro is
yeah,
obviously
it's
rolling
huge.
out that securitized token platform. So that's definitely a huge play there. So yeah, I mean 30 mil. Hopefully you guys do something good with that. It looks like they're kind of blowing out their infrastructure and team, as well as other things in R&D for that 30 mil. So I did want to address one little comment here. Did you see that roll by? It says King Lalabella says, sorry to say
Yeah.
you have no clue on current events in Venezuela. The U.S. has had its knee on the neck of Venezuela ever since its people said that oil belongs to the people and not just for a few. Do you have any thoughts on that, Dima?
Yeah, I mean Venezuela and the whole issue between like U.S. and Russia and Venezuela being in the middle there. Obviously it's that is a huge issue. If you want to that's the political side of it, right? And more global macro, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
not kind of related to much to crypto, but absolutely, it's every time a country falls between two big powers, right? Um, then you see chaos and you see things that are not necessarily going the right way for the people, right? And I know this because Ukraine is kind of in that scenario. We've seen Ukraine where basically it was trying to join the European Union, which essentially would try to join NATO, but Russia wouldn't allow that. So then basically Russia is trying to claim part of Ukraine and the influence on Ukraine. So Ukraine got caught between basically, kind of US and Europe and Russia. And, you saw the chaos that was happening there. Thankfully, even though there's still war going on and people don't talk about it, it hasn't, escalated as much as like maybe, in Venezuela and the way things are there. So it is always sad to see this, obviously, and, but the reason why I wouldn't cover that is because it's kind of more on the political
Yeah.
macro side rather than kind of crypto related.
Yeah, we definitely dabble a little bit in the political side, but certainly, like the joke we always say, this isn't like the Alex Jones podcast by any means. So I think Shun also had a point there. He said the oil does belong to the people, but the people's management is incompetent of extracting it efficiently. So definitely a good discussion, guys. It's always an interesting time when you have kind of two kind of opposed ideas, right? But we definitely want to kind of have both of those so that we can have the discussion. So we appreciate King as well as Shun, offering their insight there. Last point I have here in quick news before we hit the discussion, it looks like Binance confirms partnership with Swipe for a debit card launch. Now, this is actually a funny article. If you click into the article by the block, essentially what they've laid out here is that there was a partnership confirmed, and there was a web page that eventually got taken down, but they actually cached the web page. So they have a cached version of the Binance card FAQ, to which it says Binance is partnered with Swipe to provide a card platform for Binance users. But essentially what that means is Binance kind of maybe came out with something, maybe somebody kind of low on the totem pole kind of pushed this out, and then they got the word from up top from CZ saying, hey, we cannot do this yet, or some form or fashion. But essentially this is not live on their website yet, but the block is still reporting that Binance will roll out this kind of partnership with Swipe. So Swipe obviously has a token. I think it was a 20 or 30% increase on that XXP token over the time that this announcement kind of was made. I don't know what it's at now. Dimitri will check. But there's a lot of good parts in this article here. One of the main parts that I wanted to kind of show you was that they say the now deleted FAQ section shows that Binance Card would enable real-time conversion of crypto to fiat to use at merchants globally. So you have kind of a point of sale situation there where you'll be able to use a Binance debit card, anything that you have maybe in your Binance wallet that is available for kind of like spot or different processes within Binance. You'll now be able to kind of just swipe your card and say, hey, take my shit coin, and I can buy some of these real items for it. So that's pretty much it. That's big news. I mean, I think these are continuously rolling out, right? We saw the Venmo and PayPal announcement kind of last week. So these point of sale and kind of payment services and payment processors are starting to get in the game, and it's kind of heating up a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So the token SXP right now trading 57 cents. So I guess, when Block reported it was at 64. So it retraced a little bit. But it'll be interesting to see how, obviously it's going to go down with Binance going forward. Yeah, and having these type of services are obviously good. Back in the day, I was really fascinated by this, and we were actually working on a startup that would do something where, like, you have a card, debit card that would, credit your crypto and pay merchants in dollars, right? Because that's the huge problem. Is like, well, merchants they don't want to take crypto, right? They just want to take the dollar, right? But so the way you do it is you basically just credit the crypto side, you pay merchants in dollars, and then you do the back end stuff on. But the time, it was a little bit too early when I was working on it. Right now is definitely the time for this. So for those that looking to spend some of their crypto, and that will enable the utility of it, basically where you can again spend your shit coins, to buy some McDonald's or something.
Absolutely.
Buy yourself a Happy Meal.
That's about all mine can buy. But anyways, guys, we're sitting here. We've gotten to the discussion portion of the episode. We're going to really quickly talk, I guess, offshore financial accounts and tax implementations, or I guess indications. But then we're going to get to this Celsius situation with CeFi on DeFi, see what everybody thinks. But we essentially have two topics. Then we'll hit ETH, EOS, DeFi, and NFTs to close out the episode. We appreciate the 20 or so people that are in the chat now. I think all-time high for us is going to sit around 31. So definitely one of these days we're gonna surpass that again. We appreciate everybody kind of following along and participating, definitely. So Kieran's in the chat saying, take my shit coin. So he's going to be lining up to get one of those swipe cards. I forgot to mention in that article, Binance had acquired a majority stake in Swipe. So that might be a reason for this partnership as well. So, all right, We've hit the discussion portion. Let's do it.
Cool. Yeah. So this article basically came out on July 2nd, saying it came out actually from Economic Cooperation and Development. It's OECD. And basically it said that global tax authorities uncover 11 trillion in offshore financial accounts after information exchange. So it's a huge number, obviously, for the offshore bank accounts and holding this much in cash. And why does this matter, right? So we can say that, hey, maybe like not all of the 11 trillion is kind of there to evade taxes or whatnot, right? Maybe there's different purpose for having the funds in the offshore rather than not paying taxes or whatnot, right? But there's probably a good amount there that is to maybe hide the money or avoid taxes and so on. Well, the thing is, since there's more now light on from these regulators that are looking at it and discovered that there's such a huge amount, right, that puts a bounty and a spotlight on these offshore accounts, right? And now the people that are holding these accounts, right, they start, getting worried, right? Because, hey, those accounts are going to start being looked at by regulators, and perhaps maybe if they dig too much, they'll be able to find out my shell company that doesn't exist, and now I'm parking this cash there, right? So there's all these issues that can come up, if the regulators are starting to crack down on it. So how does this relate to crypto? So you can say it's actually the interesting stuff is that 11 trillion is 12% of global GDP.
Good God.
It's crazy. Yeah. So, obviously we've seen crypto kind of pick up, especially actually like Tether, right? Tether and stable coins have been absolutely killing it, picking up in market cap. So for these guys that maybe are holding these type of like offshore funds, perhaps they could use crypto, right? Like stable coins, if they don't want to, be exposed to volatility of Bitcoin, they want to hold it in dollars, get into some of these stable coins, especially like Tether, for example, that's like, it's kind of in a gray area as far as the regulatory stuff goes, right? So I think, this essentially, if the regulators are going to continue to crack down on this, we might see some portion of that 11 trillion start trickling down into crypto, which, could be signaling a pump, right? If that capital is going to rotate. So it's an interesting thing where it's like, well, we know that Tether overall surpassed 10 billion in terms of the market cap, right? So and that's a pretty big amount, but if you take in consideration the 11 trillion that's in offshores, that's a pretty small amount. So like the question is, will crypto like benefit from this offshore exposure, being exposed? Will some of the players in offshore, will they rotate maybe into crypto to hide their funds better than how they do it now, because they start to get exposed? And will it essentially kind of benefit the overall crypto market?
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at one of the biggest stable coins in USDC, right? And obviously Tether is not the same entity as USDC, or
Right.
even kind of close to it. But I feel like as the SEC or the IRS or these different regulation teams, they start to figure this out and they start to kind of implement the technology. Obviously, crypto moves a little bit faster than all
Yeah.
these. They always seem to be one step ahead, but it seems like the kind of thing we always talk about, where crypto is able to be traced almost better than fiat in a
Yeah.
sense, right? So like when you take USDT for example, unless you like implement, I think it is bullish for Monero or some type of privacy token and things like that. But when you tell me like you're gonna have an easier time
Yeah.
hiding your funds on a open distributed ledger, that doesn't make any sense to me. So obviously, if you use the different mixers or privacy tokens, which I admittedly don't know much about, it's gonna be tough to
Yeah.
as they catch up to this technology, as the SEC or IRS or these global regulations start to catch up. It's like, well, where do you go when this stuff is open ledger?
Yeah, no, so I agree. So I think like that really puts the spotlight in on the privacy coins, and privacy coins could really benefit from something where large players might be reshuffling their cash. Mike has been a huge fan of privacy coins, and kind of the more we see in terms of regulators are exposing these type of things, like what we see with the offshore accounts and more control, the more these privacy coins are going to be picking up. And especially even like with the situation with like not your gold too,
Mm.
like all these issues and sanctions that are happening all across the globe with different countries. um, you know they start choosing different gateways to be able to run kind of the same type of business, just using different tools.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see in the kind of macro environment that we have, what the kind of restrictions on privacy and in the guise of kind of defending against terrorism and all of these different things,
Yeah.
how the end user kind of like runs up against this, right? It's kind of like, okay, hey, we're gonna put down these regulations on Telegram because hey, there's a lot of this BS that's happening on the platform. Well, that kind of runs up to almost like a civil rights issue, right? Like
Right.
of protecting kind of your sanctity as an individual and your privacy. Yeah, super interesting conversation. But 13% of GDP,
Yeah.
you think they'd have enough to kind of like sell or pay off whoever's kind of chasing them at this point? But
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that was a pretty big headline. And so we'll see how that's if anything is going to be done, if any of the accounts will be actually seized. I think that's just the first tip of the iceberg, where it's like, oh well, here's the amount,
mm,
and we haven't seen anybody obviously um being exposed like personally, or seizing the funds yet. So I think if that starts, then that will push more players into exploring these alternatives where it's like getting into Tether or something very creative where it's like, well, I'm gonna hide my stash somewhere else where they can't link it to me basically.
I heard the argument that a lot of what's happening with the DeFi volume is actually some people kind of I guess exposing their ill-gotten funds and kind of like mixing it there. Not mixing, but what's the word I'm looking for? Anyways, we'll get on to the next discussion point here. This is an absolutely fascinating discussion, man. I can't wait for this. This is kind of like, this has so many different sides. I want to see everybody kind of get involved here, because we basically have seen the rise of DeFi. Everyone knows this. Unless you're living under a rock, DeFi's here. And possibly not going to be here in a month, but it could still be. That's why this conversation is going to be so fascinating. So we basically had Alex Mashinsky come out, and this would never have happened. None of this would have happened if he didn't tweet out. I believe on July 4th, he said, "Hey DeFi, if you look closely, you will see that compound finance is fractional reserve banking on chain. The entire world economy and the livelihood of 7.5 billion people are threatened by this practice, and here we are propagating it instead of replacing it. How not exciting." So that kind of came out. Obviously, that kind of shows Alex in the light of, hey, I don't agree with a lot of what's happening on DeFi right now. It kind of like sets up this debate of CeFi versus DeFi, right? Obviously, people are going to take different sides. I want to get your opinion on whether what's happening on DeFi is fractional reserve banking, just open source, and we'll get to that in a second. But essentially, this other Twitter personality, Leshner, wait, he seems to be he's the founder of Compound. So this guy's going at him. Sorry guys. I guess it's Robert Leshner, I think, but maybe I'm wrong. Basically, what the CEO of Compound came out and did is essentially expose that Celsius was using funds on the Compound protocol. So essentially what they were doing was taking users' funds, and they have the Etherscan here to show it. They have the ledger, and actually using the Compound protocol to essentially DeFi yield, which kind of goes up against what Alex was talking about literally 2 seconds earlier. And there's so many different arguments and discussions to be made here, but basically I want your take essentially on why you think Celsius would be using DeFi. Is it just to kind of bring it? Is it just chasing the yield? And I don't believe that they actually told any of their users that they were doing this. So does that present a problem of now you stacking DeFi on top of something, a fractional reserve that's already lending out and borrowing, and then you stack DeFi on top of that? Does that add a risk to the user? And shouldn't the user be notified that that's happening?
Yeah, there's a lot to basically unpack here, but the fact that the fractional reserve banking on chain, like I think it's a little far fetched there. When he tries to link, what we have right now as far as how the fractional reserve banking works, and Compound. I think those two things are so different, and I've seen many people actually talk about how Mashinsky just basically blew it and said that he doesn't understand how Compound works with that statement. So and then overall Mashinsky, he's a very vocal, passionate guy, right? So we've had him on our channel. We've talked to him. He spoke about DeFi. He talked about it, that's he had a very strong opinion about it, saying that, hey, DeFi is it's not gonna work, or there's no KYC, it shouldn't be happening, or eventually CeFi will take over DeFi. But and some people still think that Celsius is DeFi, which is kind of funny, because I've seen like articles that Cointelegraph comes out with, and it's like, this DeFi platform is like doing this, and it's like Celsius, and I'm like, what DeFi? What are you talking about?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's important to make it clear that Celsius is not DeFi, right? It's a CeFi, and second, in terms of chasing the yield, right? For customers, So Mashinsky did come out before, and he was building a team out of traders for Celsius. He did it publicly through Twitter. He was reaching out and he was asking, basically to onboard more traders to help, essentially generate yield for Celsius, which essentially his point is that, hey, he shares 80% of the profit with these users, so therefore it's beneficial for them, right? So and if he is doing those like things in the background, like everything that he does in the background that generates yield, like the question is, should he disclose it to the users? Do users even care, to know the like the every detail of what they do to generate the yield, right? But obviously it puts him in this awkward position because since his traders are probably hopping in on the yield side, farming and so on, right, to generate some yield in the meantime while this DeFi craze is going on, which is I can't blame them because as a trader you see an opportunity to jump in. Obviously there's risks involved and so on, right? But I'm pretty sure that if sophisticated traders will take a pretty good risk management practice when it comes to chasing the yield, especially coming from a platform like Celsius. So there's a lot of FUD that's kind of being pushed around against Celsius right now because of this. That Mashinsky came out, said this statement, and then it got exposed that they were actually involved with comp, and people try to link like, hey, people had people like withdrawing funds from Celsius, people having trouble withdrawing funds from Celsius, which is like could be. I think it's more FUD than actual reality, because if you think about Celsius, it's a big company. It's been around for some time in crypto already, and it's operating in New York, which is under jurisdiction for really heavy regulatory requirements. So for this company to fly and do something shady, it's kind of a stretch there, right? Now, I'm not saying that everything that Mashinsky says that he's totally for the people and by the people and all that stuff. Yeah, a lot of that can be just amplified for him to kind of like do the PR talk, right, to stimulate his users. And Celsius does have a pretty big community, a healthy community, right? So that's one thing that's very important to kind of point out as we're talking about Celsius and how a lot of people might be hateful towards them and misunderstanding the message kind of that is coming across. Like Mashinsky did make a mistake, but does that make Celsius a bad platform? I don't think so. You can still get a better yield than a DeFi platform. Yeah, it's not decentralized, but hey, there's pros and cons there, right? By having the setup as far as the CeFi goes, and then if obviously unwinding goes, right? Like you asked, if like DeFi starts unwinding and things start going crazy, like I said, I'm pretty sure they have safety switches and seat belts from the Celsius side as far as their exposure goes. So, this shouldn't be impacted, that much. Overall, the way Mashinsky runs his shop is really very risk averse when it comes to speculation.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought up this exposure piece because I do feel like it's maybe the only point where I do kind of agree with maybe the fudders or maybe the opposition here with Mashinsky, because when you put your funds on CeFi or you put your funds on Celsius, you're obviously taking a risk, right? Like we talked about it, not your keys, not your Bitcoin, right? But I feel like what you're doing there is trusting that your funds are probably not being used in some DeFi platform. And what I mean by that is for me to put my tokens with Mashinsky or my tokens with the centralized service, which is Celsius, I don't expect, or at least upfront expect, to be exposed to DeFi in any case. And then once those tokens are exposed, even though you get the confirmation that everything's fine, we've got seatbelts and all these things, it's like, well, I didn't really sign up for that. So
Right.
that's the only thing I think where I would probably agree with what else is going on. I do have a different, and I do want to address what another thing you talked about, which is this insolvency that like a top researcher from the block, Larry Cermak, he
Mhm.
came out and said that basically why they're doing this is because they're so close to insolvency, and the fact that they raised publicly last month, I believe, was because they were doing so well, so poorly. Larry goes, and I got the tweet thread pulled up here. He says there's a story in there for why Celsius raised so abruptly last month. We got several tips that they were very close to shutting down. 100% agree with you on the lack of transparency. I would be cautious about using them. So like that's the whole other part of the story, right? You have a prominent researcher from the block coming out and saying, hey, listen, they're chasing this yield because they're desperate, because they're trying to find yield from the assets that they currently have under management, and the best yields right now are on DeFi. So
Mm.
it's super incendiary when you think about it. It's like, hey, your company was about to shut down is essentially what a prominent person from the block was saying. So that's a whole nother part of the discussion. Will we ever know what the actual reason is, and whether that reason is because they were close to insolvency? I don't know. The Cermak went on to say, the source is me, right? Like
Mhm.
someone asked, was like, hey, where the sources at? And he
Yeah,
said,
yeah, yeah.
Me, I'm the source. So
It's
uh,
like I don't know, like so with that, like, and Mashinsky answered that, saying, "Hey, listen, well, just look at the Cell token.
mhm,
We basically have 150 million, which is like sounds great, but like, yeah, the people that were talking about it, well, but if you start unwinding the Cell token, right? It's
mhm,
yeah, it's 150 mil at current prices, but if you start unwinding and cashing out, by the time you unwind, that 150 mil, once it comes out, it's going to be way less, right? It's going to be
mhm,
like 40 mil or something like that. So that's something to keep kind of in consideration. But yeah, the whole thing about the lending and borrowing space, as far as the CeFi goes, I've talked about like the BlockFi, right, and Celsius, how BlockFi, overall was doing a raise. They did a raise earlier, before Celsius, and my whole idea was that, since stable coins were heating up in terms of people buying up more stable coins because they want to hold dollar, especially in current like global environment,
mhm,
and then parking that dollar to earn interest, which is like stable coins that they offer interest right now is like north of 8%. So it's like it's fantastic, right? It's like wow, like no
mhm,
bank offers that, right? So the whole competition there is in order for you to gain the market share, for people to deposit their funds, you have to offer an attractive rate. Now you can do that, through two ways, right? You can obviously have juice the borrowers, where and have that percentage is pretty high in terms of borrowing, which will supplement lenders, and pay that interest. But that's not always the case, because if the borrowing demand falls, then you have to actually decrease the interest rate to stimulate and get more borrowers in, because the interest is lower, there should be more borrowers that come in to borrow dollar. So the reason why I'm explaining this is because I think that BlockFi and Celsius, they both were subsidizing kind of their interest for the stable coins to gain the market share that is coming in, from stablecoin side. So they were propping up the interest that they were paying out for their stablecoin lenders. You can do that so long, right? So it's whoever has the most capital, basically, in order to prop up their interest and stay competitive in the market.
mhm,
Because if if Celsius drops their interest, right, let's say goes strictly based on demand and supply, then people are going to move away to BlockFi because they offer better interest.
mhm,
So this whole like battle that's going on between the two, is like, well, who has the money to be able to sustain it longer and starve out the other player. And when you put it like this way, then that's when you have situations where companies will take aggressive measures like chasing the yield that's maybe a little bit more riskier,
mhm.
and then operating based on just simple supply and demand when it comes to paying out interest. So I know I ramble on a lot,
No.
but that's kind of the idea, is that I think it's just the competition that's right now that's heating up in the CeFi space is pushing Celsius to try to generate a yield, outside of just conventional things that they usually do, which can essentially increase the risk exposure, for the company itself. But there's really nothing right now that's like super red flag in terms of, hey, my funds are not safe. I need to pull out of Celsius at the moment, because the funds are custodied, and everything seems to be fine at the moment. You can see their user base; they do post it on chain. You can see those stats. It's transparent there, how many funds are held at Celsius. So.
Yeah, it's a fascinating kind of time. Obviously, we had that kind of bear market there for a little while, but with the rise of DeFi, we've kind of got the like you say, volatility kind of brings excitement, right? It brings people in, and that's what's happening. Maybe it's not like true volatility, but it's volume, right? And I think the more volume that's getting in at this clip, it's just become an exciting conversation. And we have a lot of comments to get to that I want to touch on really quick. I guess Pickles in the chat, Crypto Pickles in the chat. Hold on, Crypto Pickle. Let me see. He's asking
the squirrel,
what this little guy is. He said it's a Squirtle. Clearly a Crypto Kitty. So we've got our Crypto Kitty here. We got this from Crypto Kaiju all that time ago. We had Oliver Carding on the podcast. That was pretty fun. Looks like he's talking about BNT. Can you check out BNT? By chance?
I'll put it up.
We have 1-2 saying DeFi is going to be a bubble. Sean is saying, I agree, too much competition for yields, very unrealistic to sustain long term. Brandon is saying, who can you trust these days? Sean is also saying, who knows, in the end it might be a bubble or it's the beginning of a new huge market, but I believe it will crash first before it will become a game changer. So I think most of us that have seen the the ICO bubble, I think most of us, this is just not going to be sustainable, so I'm going to put him on the ground. I think most of us that have seen the ICO market definitely probably agree with that last statement, right?
Yeah, but also like everybody in the sense it's a bubble, but bubbles are actually good. And the reason why, it's like when you have a bubble, you have a huge influx of capital into that sector, which essentially ends up creating innovation, attracting more talent, attracting more eyes on that sector. If it starts unwinding and crashes, that's that's going to be a shorter term correction. But if the bubble never happened, then we would never attracted the capital, the eyes, the developers, the everything that is happening right now in DeFi. So even though bubbles are dangerous, but they're actually really useful, and kind of like in ICOs as well. ICOs, it was a bubble, but like if there was no ICO bubble, then there wouldn't be like cool companies that we know now that had an ICO and are doing wonderful things for our industry, right? So without that bubble, those guys wouldn't get funding, right?
I always love when people bring up ICOs in this negative connotation, because it definitely, okay, let's talk about it, right? Like there were definitely bad scam ICOs, and it was an easy way for scammers to kind of pry money away from unsuspecting people. But at the same time, like you mentioned, ICOs gave us all of this, not all of it, but there's a ton of companies out there, Celsius being one of them, that raised through ICO. And it's like, look at all the good it's given us. Certainly, it's not 100% clip. You're going to see people get scammed, but the ICO was, I would say, like, I wouldn't say inherently good, but it definitely had some good practices. So I think the issue here is going to be like seeing a black swan event like a compound getting hacked, because that's my biggest concern here. I think Galen even talked about this on the podcast that we had with him, but we've been talking about this on Layer1Live forever. It's like, people that are using DeFi right now, it's amazing that you can put a certain amount of money in without thinking that, hey, we're seeing weekly hacks of contracts. So we're still at such a nascent stage of DeFi and all of these contracts and all of the tech that we're dealing with. And it's like, how do you put more than 5% of your net worth on on a compound when we've seen weekly hacks of DeFi at this point. So that's my only concern with DeFi. I like the open source nature. I think like they're doing a lot of things CeFi is doing, right? And it's funny because Celsius's big slogan is like, be your own banker. What was it? Like destroy
unbank yourself.
Unbank yourself.
Yeah.
And it's like DeFi is like un-CeFi yourself.
Yeah.
So it's like going down the line, which is really funny to watch. But dude, fascinating times, man. And I while I'm not a big user of DeFi for what I just mentioned, I don't trust the contracts and all of those things. I think it's important and it will be a big industry to this day. But if we have a huge Black Swan event like what happened with Compound, it could take again, like we've seen it with ICOs. If ICOs didn't have that huge kind of drop and maybe just kind of declined over time, I'm getting into hypotheticals now, but you get my meaning. Like if you see a huge Black Swan event, it could set the industry back, that specific sector back maybe a year or two, like we're seeing with ICOs now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And initially we'll start it back. I'm more concerned, like, hacking is definitely is a threat, right? That can occur. But I'm also concerned about the volatility that, can happen, let's say in the market, right? If some of these coins starts dropping like 20% a day, and that puts a strain on liquidity to unwind those positions, and once the positions start unwinding, then it amplifies the move and impacts the market where it ends up overshooting a lot. And the price discovery, I'm saying like the optimal market price gets overshot by a lot because of the unwinding that happens. That's really something that's I'm worried about more. I think that has kind of a higher risk, even though we do hear about hacks, but the hacks haven't been that big, right? Yet, right? But so like I think the volatility is something that a lot of people don't really talk about much, and once once the volatility picks up, I think people realize how it can amplify the overall move, because essentially what you're doing is that sector is using more leverage, right? When they're doing these things. So more leverage, essentially tends to be more volatility. But overall, if we do, come out of the other side, and after, let's say it does break down, usually, DeFi space will evolve. They'll start making, getting better in terms of development, security, maybe not using that much leverage, adjust certain things, and evolve into something better and bigger and overall stronger, right? Because we've seen DeFi kind of go through cycles of issues, right? Where you have Oracle problems, right? And then we slowly kind of fix that up, right? There was some companies, struggled. There's some companies when maybe out of business, lost, users and so on. But DeFi space is still here. It's just consolidated, right? And that's something that will happen, obviously, once this unwinds, is that, it will suck out, kind of all the players that could not handle it, right? Were not prepared for it. And, essentially it will consolidate that whole sector. And then from there, it'll be interesting how we're going to come out on the other side, how it's going to be different in terms of how lending and borrowing is going to be done on DeFi. And if by any chance it's going to be somehow regulated, right? Because it's like when you have people lose an obscene amount of money, then the regulators are like, wait a minute, what is this?
Yeah.
So right now nobody cares because people are making money, and those that are losing money, it's not much. But if there's a big like Black Swan event, then the regulators are gonna be like, wait a minute, what is this DeFi stuff? And then start looking into, maybe provide guidelines or
same thing with ICOs.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I know you're primarily focused with high market cap tokens, right? Your Bitcoins, your EOSs, your Ethereums of the day. But I wonder if you've kind of looked into maybe a couple tokens specifically on DeFi. Obviously, this is not financial advice, but it strikes me that getting to the heart of what you're saying, where you're going to see a consolidation. One of the conversations we were having just in our group chat was kind of the stickiness of the user in DeFi, right? Because they're called DeFi yield farmers, not synthetics yield farmers. Yeah. Like the person on synthetics, how sticky is that user when they're going to move on to the next platform whenever that percentage is either subsidized, like you're saying, or just better maybe twice as good as what you're seeing on Synthetics. Is that a Synthetics user now? No, it's going to be an Aave user. It's going to be, a compound user. So I just wonder about the stickiness of these users as they move from platform to platform. Synthetics is definitely one I've looked at. I think it's worth looking into. Maybe I think the kind of narrative that I'm looking for now is maybe trying to find China DeFi projects. Mm-hmm. We've seen a lot of Western DeFi projects, but finding the Chinese platforms that can really obviously drive a narrative home isn't a bad look. So I know Switch.io was something I was looking at. SWTH was the token ticker. They have like a decentralized kind of like basically a Uniswap competitor. But there's a ton to look at out there, man. What have you seen?
Yeah. I mean, I agree. What I've seen, I wanted to mention is that Tron is getting into DeFi. Justin Sun. So it's interesting. He came out basically saying that he's setting up DeFi, products basically same as we see right now with like Compound and so on Tron.
Well, it's a copy paste of Synthetics, right?
Yeah,
I forgot the exact platform, but they essentially created Synthetics on Tron.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. But as far as this stickiness goes, right now, given the craze that's going on in DeFi, obviously it's going to be majority of users is just going to be speculators that are in there just for the craze that's going on, to play along the theme. This is the opportunity right now. We have a window to make, to farm the yield right now. I don't really care what the platform is. I'm just there to get the yield, So. Those speculators are just there for the show. So once the show changes, it'll be hard to say that group of people will stick around with, let's say, that one single platform because maybe their user experience was great or whatnot. But the way the system is designed, and really, it's like we kind of talk down on DeFi and the way it is right now, but it shouldn't be kind of perceived that way because there's really no kind of better way of setting up the DeFi system besides how it is now. Because right now, the way it's set up, it incentivizes people, right, to provide liquidity on these platforms, right, and that's how you're farming. So, if you're not going to incentivize, then there's going to be no liquidity in the platform, and therefore DeFi project will not work. So that's kind of something like. We've talked about when we interviewed Kane on Synthetics. It's like, well, here's the reason why it's set up that way, right? You have to understand that it's the function that's necessary right now in order to actually run this thing. Now, obviously, the speculators get in and you start, that starts getting out of control. But eventually, when the correction happens, we'll find a balance, right, where we keep the incentivizing the liquidity providers, right, to work with these platforms, and not over leverage and cause this huge speculation run in the DeFi space. So we'll get there. DeFi is like kind of like what is that saying? Breaking you're saying fixing the plane while it's flying.
Yeah, I think we got that from Kane. It's funny, man, we had that interview with Kane from Synthetics, and he's an awesome guy, and we always talk about him on this podcast, rightfully so. But it's funny, we were having that conversation in like November of last year. I think it was like October, November. We were having Synthetics on. They were DeFi yield farming back then. Like they were doing it. No one was talking about it. It's like someone put a name to this process, and like everyone's like, oh my god, like we got to do this. It's like, well, Synthetics has been doing this since they were 50 cents. Where you been? Yeah, exactly. So definitely have to get Kane on again. We've tasked Dimitri with getting Kane on again. We just don't want, obviously it's been about 10 months. So I guess the only other thing that we need to talk about here, and I think Ola brought it up, and I'll get to a couple of the other comments because there were some good ones, but Ola says, are DeFi platforms really decentralized? Are the smart contracts controlled by the dApp developer? And that's a great other point that was in that Twitter thread, right? Because people, you're making the comparisons between CeFi and DeFi. Well, DeFi is not even decentralized, right? Like fully. They have, I'm sure they have the multi-sig setup and all these things, but eventually at the end of the day, if they wanted to confiscate the funds or somehow get the funds out of that contract, they would do it. like that. Like obviously it doesn't behoove them to do
Yeah.
so, but it's this myth of full decentralization. I think has made its way out. I'm sure they'll set up a DAO and they'll figure it out and do all these things where no one will be able to withdraw those funds. But up to this point, and when you start a protocol, DeFi is CeFi in a way. So we're so far down the rabbit hole at this point. But go ahead.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, if we're gonna start talking this way, then it's like, well, how decentralized is Bitcoin? You know, or like how decentralized all of these other things. Like if this network runs like, you know, on AWS servers, is that decentralized? You know, like that it's a big rabbit hole we can, you know, obviously go into if we start talking about like very nitpicky like stuff like you know, like dApp developers and smart contracts. So it's, you know, it has to be a balance, right? There's some decentralization, right? Obviously DeFi has more kind of decentralization and less control. You know, I mean, the users have more control rather than CeFi, right? CeFi is more obviously centralized. But, you know, as far as fully decentralized, fully like, you know, then yeah, I mean, it's not that. So it depends on like, you know, how you look at it.
Yeah, I feel like there's some maxims, and I'll stay down this hole with you for now. But I feel like there are some maxims. It was funny, we had Zaki and Dean, and Dean made a good point about interoperability and like the different kind of networks and all these things, and he made the point about kind of how basically the multi-chain point, right? There's going to be tons of different chains. They're all going to do the different things. And we were like, well, why aren't all chains just going to be sucked into one? He's like, well, people don't even speak the same language in the world right now. Yeah. Right. He said, talk to me when the whole world is speaking one language. That's essentially the quote that he had. Point, yeah. It was a great point, because it's like, well, and I think there are some maxims like that when you talk about full decentralization. I just think people aren't meant to be in this kind of chaos of no central authority, although you could break that up and have a spectrum of decentralization. Full decentralization kind of like almost scares people, you know, in a way. So but hey, this has probably been our best discussion point, and we honestly, you guys have hit us with a lot of good points, a couple of good points in the comment chat that I wanted to touch on, just like maybe finding a Chinese project that is doing DeFi and trying to catch that wave as maybe their users become, you know, more adept at finding investment opportunities. There's also a chance that projects like Tron, projects like EOS, and I think Pickle's talking about Vigor. There was an EOS Rex mention, but the idea that these other more scalable chains can take away market share from the Ethereum DeFi is probably a good narrative to follow. So you've seen a bunch of tokens pump on Ethereum that are involved, you know, with DeFi, finding these other opportunities on different EOS smart chains. Or not EOS. Sorry, I did a shill there. On these other smart Polkadot, right? You're talking about EOS, Tron, all the big smart contract platforms. Finding those opportunities within that protocol makes sense.
Right. No, absolutely.
Cool. All right. So I think we had a couple more comments, but we're going to move on here. We spent a ton of time on discussion portion. Before we go on, we have 21 people in the chat. If you're the bastard that keeps disliking our videos, I literally will come and find you. Like, we have a serial disliker on our channel now. It's like, dude, just unsubscribe. Go to wherever you need to. Like, stop coming into this channel and just disliking the video. Like, who does that? I don't. I'm sorry. I'm not gonna get on a rant. But that's just me. So I'll move on to Ethereum here.
Confused, triggered.
Oh, I'm super triggered, man. There's no reason to do that. But it looks like there's 22 people in the chat. We appreciate you guys following along. Thanks for dropping all the comments. I'll get to them as Dimitri talks about Ethereum here in Metamask. If you want to follow along, I obviously pull up the articles. But in the description, you can see all of our you can see all of the links that we're talking about and follow along on your own browser or something like that. So.
Cool. Nice. Yeah. It looks like we got some likes coming in to offset the down like. So appreciate all the lads smashing the like. But yeah, let's move along to ETH. So just really quick, you know, interesting news coming from Metamask version 8, basically an update. Metamask is overall just a great like tool. Like I love Metamask, man. Like, when you talk about like the UI and just how easy it is, these guys have been like killing it. So the recent update, really the major thing that they talk about is basically when you're, let's say using a website that requires MetaMask, instead of sharing all of the accounts that you have on, with MetaMask, with this website, you can now select a specific account that you want to, let's say, share with that website only, right? So it's basically giving you the ability to pick, so you don't have to share all the information with that specific website. So it gives more security, privacy, all the things that we kind of, love there. There's some small changes to, the UI, a slick UI as they call it. So make it, much easier to kind of navigate it within MetaMask, even though it was already kind of easy, but, they're obviously, progressing and making it better and better each time. They also introduced the Web3 encryption, which is, essentially they're, preparing for the Web3 once, preparing their platform for it once the developers are going to, essentially deploying anything there. And, so that's the major feature upgrade for as far as the encryption goes. They're getting ready for the future. Also interesting onboarding tool that they have. So let's say if you go to a website now and it requires MetaMask, there's going to be a specific box that is, that when you click on it, it's going to take you to MetaMask and you can register really quick, and then it'll redirect you back to that same website. So this way, kind of smooths out the process, so you don't have to, open up another tab or like, completely leave that website, set up an account, and then forget what that website was. So it just makes things more smoothly, as far as like if you didn't have MetaMask, then you can download it and get it set up easily. And that, there's they emphasize the security and all these things that they constantly, improving on. Overall, it's great to see MetaMask, deploying new things. I'm pretty happy with the new version here and all of the changes that they're implementing. Like I'm a user of MetaMask. I don't know if you guys, let me know in chat if you use it or if you use any other wallets. But this one has been just like fantastic.
Yeah, it's hard to. I think there's like a top 5 that you can make of like most important just entities or apps or different things that have pushed the composability on Ethereum, and definitely MetaMask is up there. And honestly, being a gamer and being interested in NFT assets, the idea of authentication, obviously this can go to trading and all these different things, but just from my perspective, having the authentication process and like a profile that you can use across and like a reputation system across different platforms, as opposed to having a profile on each separate sector, is like one of the coolest things I think blockchain has done and will do in the future. So it's interesting, man. Like wallets, I put this on my Twitter the other day.
I saw that.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, I don't know. I want to hear your thoughts, but like people, I mean, you have the like standard adoption, like of crypto and Bitcoin, all these things, and people always go back to the point like, my mother won't be able to use like wallets. Like she won't be able to handle in private key and a username, all these things. And I made the point in that tweet, and I want to hear your responses. Like, if it's about the need of doing it. How it's in relation to the need of the actual setup process and the maintenance. If there is no need to do this, which frankly, most people don't need to set up wallets right now. Like we like to do it. We try to push the idea of self-sovereignty, of be your own bank, obviously have your own vault. But for the most part, people don't need to do these things that we're asking them to do up to this point, which is set up a MetaMask wallet, write down the private key. But if their paycheck was there, or if there was a solid amount of money in that wallet, they would make sure that happened. And even your mother, Dimitri, would be able to set up this wallet because it's in relation to need. I need to eat. this has money on it that I use to pay for my food, to pay for my family. I'm going to get this done. And so I just think that that's a scapegoat that a lot of people have, that where they're like, hey, my mother wouldn't be able to do this. She would be able to do it. If there was 100K in there, she'd be able to do it. So I wonder what you think about this.
Yeah, it's interesting because, like, you know, like I remember talking to projects that are like, well, you can set up a wallet in 3 clicks, you know, and it's like, that is their main thing. It's like, it's so easy, a toddler can do it, like, you know, and emphasizing like, but, you know, that was really not the issue, you know. It's like, the issue is really just, you know, the fact that, like, yeah, onboarding process maybe have some friction, but like really if you make it very seamless, like, and then realize that the demand is still not there, then there's something else, right? But, you know, to answer your question about, you know, kind of if our parents could do it, like, you ever been on a DMV website, like try to fill out a form there? Like, dude, like the process there is worse, bro. Like the motor vehicle, like any government like agency where you have to do some kind of documents, and like their website is like from like 1920s, like, you know, it's like their computers probably still run on like Windows 95, and like the forms and everything they create is just so like not user friendly, but they still go through it, right? Exactly. Because they need to do like the documentation, they need to do registrations, they need to do this, you know, they'll take the time to figure it out, right? And like when I was doing some of that stuff for my parents, you know, I was like, Jesus, I was like some of the stuff in crypto is like much easier to do than this. Like, what are these guys like? You know, it's insane, right? So like, yeah, it kind of comes back to that, you know, point where you said it's like, well, if there's a need, then people will figure out and use it. So really, like the UI and like the process of itself, I don't think as complex as people perceive it. You know, considering like we do a lot of other things that are way more complex, you know, because like the government agencies, let's say, require us. So.
Yeah, I think it really comes down to mobile phone adoption more than it comes down to crypto wallet adoption. If the single person understands a smartphone and how to set up a username and password on the smartphone, they're going to be able to do this. If they don't, and like it's a completely foreign process, but that's not even crypto at that point. That's just it. You're going to have a problem with any app. So I love that analogy of the DMV, by the way, because I do think like there's like things like taxes where if you need to do it, you're going to get it done. So yeah, definitely a good point. I think Yacht Sui from Animoca Brands really that really hit home. I think he made that initial point, but I kind of like rambled on about it. We have some great comments to get to, and we'll touch on some things, but I do want to finish up with Ethereum as well. But let's touch on these comments. I think Ola Art said the only security a user has are the transactions being recorded on chain. This is a good point. SL said ETH services providers and dApps should be terrified with ETH 2.0. No. What happens when ETH 2 drops EVM support and not backward compatible? Exchanges would have to spend a lot to migrate to. So I think that point we made with Staked, right? Tim Ogilvy, we asked like, hey, you've set up infrastructure for all of these different projects on Ethereum. What happens when you make that switch? And he said it is going to be an issue. Did you have have anything on that?
Yeah, it's going to be an issue. But you know, I think that's the kind of the reason like why also like ETH 2.0 is taking a while, because they want to probably give the ability for people to prepare what changes are going to be necessary. So I think everybody knows it's coming, right? So it's like everybody's preparing like accordingly. It's not like, hey, I'm just going to wait until the end and see what happens, you know? You know, like wish me luck, you know? But so I think it will be, you know, kind of disruptive. You know, some of the players that were not preparing themselves, you know, are probably going to get out, you know, and that's the consolidation that occurs. But you know, it's nature, you know, basically weeds out the weak.
Yeah. Good point. All right, I'll get to this last bit of comments. Sorry, I'm pulling up the next article. Based on our little guy that keeps coming in here and in disliking. It looks like we had a ton of support in the comment section and the like bar. Crypto Pickle says must be a no coiner. I probably agree with that. SL saying hit the like button. So we had a bunch of people kind of come in and said they're adding likes. So we do appreciate your guys' support. I guess we'll just talk about that every episode so we get you guys to like like the channel. But Mungia is coming in and asking what did I miss about Celsius. It'd be tough to go back right now. Kind of like we spent a whole, I think, 20 minutes on the subject. So after the actual episode, or I don't know if you can actually go back in the episode now. I think you can. You can find. I would have to go back. I really don't want to do that right now, but you definitely after the episode, I'll have it time stamped so that you can check out our CeFi, DeFi discussion and everything we did there. And Ola's talking about NFTs. We'll get to NFTs in a second. So I've got this story here. I've got Catalyst and Kyber DAO go live. Now, admittedly, I haven't been in the Kyber ecosystem. Kyber's been on an absolute tear as far as the token price goes. Dimitri, if you want to pull that up and give us an update for like 7-day, week, month. But basically, they're launching Catalyst and Kyber DAO. They've launched an initiative that is basically rolling out their staking services. So I've got it right here. 65% of when you stake will go to staking rewards, 30% to kind of a reserve pool, and then 5% will be used for buying back and burning the tokens. So basically what's happened here is Kyber DAO has gone live with this vote. Staking has gone live. So essentially all of their kind of ecosystem is now rolling based on this initiative getting pushed forward. You can take a look in the article. I mean, it's fairly large article, but essentially Kyber is now live. They have their front end for staking. They're going to be a big player most likely in this space when it comes to staking. I'm sure I think at the bottom of this article, yes, Stake Capital is already in. Stake with Us is already in. There's a ton of people that are setting up staking infrastructure here. So as far as Kyber goes, man, definitely a good one to check out. Obviously the tokens pumped like crazy over the past, I would say, month or two. So maybe not the best entry point, but who knows if they can work on their I think they're obviously a platform for providing liquidity to DeFi protocols and things like that. Candidacy and Kyber itself could do well. So you'll obviously be able to, when you stake, participate in this DAO. It's funny, man, as DAOs have continuously gone on, I think they've gotten more, I guess, seamless. I think we've seen a ton of opportunities to kind of observe what works with DAOs, what doesn't work with DAOs, and I think just rolling out new DAOs has become easier for these platforms as opposed to kind of figuring it out as you go in the first kind of iterations. So that's Kyber DAO. We'll see.
So the token price is trading right now at $1.71. And it used to be at $1. So it's about, it's up 94% in the last 15 days. Or hold on, let me see. No, not 15, 7 days. Yeah. Gotcha.
All right. Well, I mean, again, there's a lot to break down here. I really don't, have the necessary, time to break down this entire article, but check it out if you can. I mean, Kyber's going to be a good one to keep an eye on if you're interested in the staking space and kind of participating in, I guess, DAO or DeFi liquidity. So yeah, that's pretty much it for Ethereum, guys. We got a couple comments. We'll get to DeFi here. We've made it to EOS, so that'll be fun. So we'll get to it. Let me see if I have
when voice.
Yeah, exactly. Well, when voice now. So, guys, another update we have. We're coming out. Me and Dimitri are getting new mics. So I know you're hearing some kind of feedback that we're getting, but we're gonna both have new mics likely here in the next couple of weeks. So just some updates we're throwing and upgrades we're throwing out your way. But basically what we have here, guys, July 4th, it was scheduled to come out a little bit later, but on July 4th, as advertised, Block One has dropped voice on the App Store. So first thing I did was went to my phone, downloaded the app, checked it out. I had obviously been in the browser form for a little while as like a beta user. I'm going to pull up the article real quick. I love how just EOS still gets a lot of FUD to me, like unnecessary kind of like the title of this article is crypto social media platform Voice finally launches on EOS, like for no reason. So basically, guys, obviously, if you've been following the EOS ecosystem, this is kind of like a social media app that's going to be leveraging EOS.io. This is kind of Dan Larimer's baby. It's what he's been working on. They pumped 150 mil. I think one of the Forbes former C-suite kind of C-level executives, Salah Michael Zalatimo, has been ahead of the protocol. So this kind of got launched. You can go to the App Store now and view it. I think if you didn't have early access, you cannot post up to this point. But you can view, and then on August 15th, like CryptoPickle's saying, you'll be able to actually go into the app and start posting. They go on in this article to talk about the delayed launch, which I'm not certain that is even correct. I think they actually pushed up the launch. But anyways, we'll have a new social media platform. Ton of discussions to get to as far as Voice goes, man. But as far as your kind of like initial thoughts on Voice in general, what do you got?
Yeah, it's interesting because Voice, we've talked about how it has evolved, right? And kind of like the expectations that people had for Voice should be has kind of changed and kept on shifting around and so on. With the fact that they're rolling out, I mean, it's obviously great, to have products finally starting to get released. I think CryptoPickle said that on August 15th, you'd be able to invite friends to join to Voice as well. So they're kind of doing this slowly. And I like kind of the process as well, because generally speaking, if you look historically on like different social networks, they usually like to limit it down first, like it's exclusive, right? So then you have like people that enter first, and then like it gets spread around by, let's say, you can only invite, let's say, somebody else if you have an account there. So it's kind of like that exclusivity there, right? To gain the popularity. But there's certain things that like I saw on Twitter that people were talking about. It's like, well, I understand you have to do like KYC and it has to be a real person, but like, can we just have like a different profile name, not my full name when I'm posting things, like simple things like that. I think is something that they could work out and have like, maybe like my like username, but then like if you go to my profile, then there will be my real name there, So it's like, I think there's still kind of like some kinks to kind of work it out. But what I haven't tried it on the mobile. Have you tried it? Like, what is your kind of
So I definitely tried it on the mobile. The app is I've got my tweet that I posted the other day on it, and I want to go through some of the comments from the community. But the app itself, like aesthetically, is completely fine. Like it's actually really nice, real clean experience, to be expected if you're pumping that much money into an app. It's actually just like getting people on, and I put it right here. I said, Voice is actually a great app aesthetically. What's it going to take to actually get me to regularly scroll that feed? Which again comes down to it, right? Like it kind of reminds me of the smart contract platform situation that we always talk about, right? It's like, hey, you got great tech. Don't get me wrong. Okay. But how are you going to incentivize? How are you going to gamify? How are you going to add these users who are going to come back over time? So I asked that, I just tweeted that out, and I got some feedback from the community here. Adriana over at Cypherglass said, good content, a strong sales pitch to social users about data protection, comparison to current media methods, and a celebrity or two, which is a good point. I think there were some points on monetization of your time and interaction with real verified users, to which I said, well, when is the monetization actually going to happen? Obviously, I think Crypto Pickle's talking about it in the chat there, but there is going to at some point be a monetization of your time and of maybe a gamification of posts and all these things where they're kind of gamifying social media, if you will. But that doesn't exist up to this point. Like certainly there's a token that you can receive in the app. I think there's like a 750 daily reward actually that you can get. But at the point, like there's no exchanging of this token on an exchange, or it's not essentially live, right? Like the whole cyclical nature or the ecosystem that they're trying to develop for this token isn't live. So that's not even live yet. Someone that's downloading the app doesn't get that yet. as far as being able to say, hey, I can take these rewards right now, and I get it. Certainly, like you said, it's going to be worked out over time. There's a ton of things that we could talk about with Voice.
One two mentioned there no more KYC on Voice. So is that true or?
I don't think that they're using. That's a good point. I would love to get the community's kind of input here. I know that at first they were using a passport or an ID for KYC. I don't know exactly, what that situation here is now. That might be a good point, though. I think I might have heard something about that. And that will kind of run up against how do you actually verify a user.
Right.
So, good point. If you can kind of lay that out for us, 1, 2, that definitely slipped my mind. I talked with Zach Gall from Everything EOS, I guess yesterday afternoon about Voice. The two things he pointed out, one of them which you pointed out itself, or yourself, was like having the full names, like not being able to differentiate maybe a power influencer versus like just any random person. Not to say like there's any difference, but on a social media app, usually you want to follow the social media influencers. There's no real difference. You basically just see a full name. There's no way to differentiate the two. The other thing he said was about kind of like the community tools that will be launched. So in the same way that Reddit has a community, like community tabs now, where you're like, oh, I want to go and be a part of crypto /r cryptocurrency. You can go and do that. It's not, and that was one of the things I told him. It's kind of a hodgepodge of information. Like I just download the app and like boom, I get the whole top comments. I get the whole newest first and things like that. But like the way Twitter works is I see information of things of people I want to follow. Right. It's not just a hodgepodge of kind of info, which up to this point, Voice seems to me when I open that app. I think I'm bullish on Voice. I think they pumped a ton of money. It's one of the reasons I'm bullish on EOS in general. But there will need to be changes like you talked about. So
it's interesting. I saw the crypto pickle saying that no more government ID is required. So I think they're going to do like a captcha or something like that to validate the user. So, no longer need like the passport and I guess an ID for it. So, it can be quite extensive, using that. So I agree. All you're trying to do is just make sure that it's a genuine user. You don't have to necessarily, I guess, verify the identity. Is kind of how it's going to be.
Yeah, one thing I didn't really understand, and this is going down that rabbit hole, but one thing I really didn't understand about social media and kind of like free speech before I got into crypto was the idea of having anonymous users as well. Right. Like there's an importance in having some users, if they wish to be anonymous, in speaking their mind and being anonymous. So, I mean, I'm bullish on Voice. I liked the app when it came out. I think as they roll out the tokenization and gamification model that they're going to set up, I think that's going to be super interesting. The only other thing I would say, which there was a comment, I'm not going to pull it up now. It looks like I just, closed it. But there was an idea of once you set up, almost like Voice would be the gateway to the entire EOS ecosystem. So Voice being this large social media platform that's pulling in a ton of users, that would be the gateway to new user signups. So now that person would sign up for an EOSIO wallet and then get access to maybe the different aspects, maybe even wax when you're talking about like kind of like parallel change. But right now up to this point, you have, gambling dApps, you have, or maybe that's a little played out. That was like a 2018 thing. But basically what you had back then was all of these gambling dApps as the intro point to the EOS ecosystem. You'd be like, oh, I'm chasing yield. I set up this wallet. Now maybe you're a sticky user on EOS. But now the idea here is Voice will be this gateway to the rest of the ecosystem through the wallet creation on Voice. So
yeah, that's the idea behind it. We'll see. That's the theory. We'll see how that plays out in the market, basically.
Yeah, definitely. So if you guys got thoughts on Voice, leave them in the comments and as well as the chat here. It looks like, did we have any other comments to get to? It says, you pointed out that it's no more government ID, so we don't need to get to that. Okay, awesome. Well, we're sitting about an hour and 45 minutes to the 19 people that are in the chat. Appreciate you guys stopping by. I think we peaked out at 22. We'll see what we go into next. So we've got DeFi, we've got NFTs, and then we're going to close up shop.
Yep. So yeah, let me hop into DeFi. Just really quick, interesting stuff happening as far as like the DEXs go. We've seen overall DEX, volume for DEXs have been picking up significantly, right? So the exchanges, it can be due. We can talk about it can be due maybe to the fact that now centralized exchanges like maybe like Coinbase and others are now working closer with the regulators, and there's more oversight and reporting, and the crypto people don't really like that stuff, maybe, so they're moving away maybe from centralized exchanges and hopping to DEXs, because we've seen DEXs overall, they've been around, right, but they haven't been really, performing, right, in the past. And that's because I think there was really no need to use a DEX before, when you had centralized exchanges and they were performing fine. It's easier to use and all that stuff. But now that when you have, exchanges that are starting to work with, maybe authorities reporting, some people are shifting over, and also maybe, where, you have a situation where it's like Brazil or somewhere else where they start, banning maybe trading of cryptocurrency like derivatives or spot, that's when you can have DEXs that are coming in and picking up the rest of that, user base that can't use centralized exchanges based on regulatory environments. So anyway, so the news here that came out is basically saying there's a new competitor that's coming out, decentralized derivatives. I've talked about derivatives, so many times where, we had a huge influx of products in derivatives markets this year, which is really good because it helps the price discovery, it smooths out the volatility. It's a fantastic product to have for risk management and so on. So this DerivaDex recently announced that it plans to launch this quarter, essentially derivatives. This company has been incubated by Polychain Capital. Recently raised 2.7 million. Also, you have Dragonfly Capital Partners, Coinbase Ventures, CMS Holdings, 3 Arrow Capital, are all behind this. So it's some serious players that are involved in having this basically platform that allows you to trade derivatives on a decentralized exchange. Because it's a huge opportunity. We see just regular decentralized exchange products that are being traded, and there's great success there. And derivatives also have been shown a lot of success on centralized exchanges. So now if you have decentralized, then there's a huge opportunity and the market that they can capture, right, if they can make this product right. So I think it's a huge when I think it's the more we have derivatives products, the better it is as far as the available liquidity, price action, when it comes to discovery of the market price and smooth out the volatility. So it's it's pretty good news on DEX side when it comes to derivatives. The other DeFi piece is just it was interesting. This came across basically my newsfeed. It's just the total market cap of DeFi tokens that essentially just the total market cap of DeFi tokens is 7.4 billion. Like what? Like 7.4 billion as far as the market cap goes of all these DeFi tokens. It's it just shows you the scale of how rapid the DeFi has picked up, and in terms of market cap and how quickly people are hopping in on it. When will we see a correction? Will it require us to get to 20 billion? 50 billion? But nobody knows, right? And being on the short side, maybe shorting these products and hoping that DeFi will explode one day, well, you're going to find yourself basically insolvent and pushed out, because you might be right, maybe it will correct sometime, but hopping in front of this train, you're definitely going to suffer, and you're not going to be able to sustain the losses before this thing turns around. So For now, it's going to continue to grow. We're at 7.4 billion. We'll see if where it's going to be in a week.
Yeah, yeah. We've definitely had our fair share of DeFi discussion for this piece. One thing I wanted you to maybe break down for me is the kind of the process of automated market making. So like, what exactly is that process? Why have we seen automated market making actually like pump up over the past maybe month or two with the rise of DeFi, maybe like processes that Uniswap essentially like uses to I guess make a market.
Yeah, I mean, so market makers just in general, it's good. They provide a significant function for the market because they provide liquidity. They provide books, and they're basically like the LPs, liquidity providers.
Mm-hmm.
So automated market making is basically just a version of that is efficiently made through an algorithm, right? That okay, if this then that kind of like situation. Here's what we're doing with our order books, and here's where we're getting our price feeds and liquidity, and doing the arbitrage, between different platforms. So like market makers are very important, to have, to provide liquidity when we have situations where liquidity dries up, what we've seen back on Black Thursday, right? Where we saw BTC drop 50%. That's when you have these market makers actually pulling out. So if they're pulling out, then the spread increases between the sell and the buy price, and liquidation started and starts cascading. So you need to have market makers and automated market makers that are efficient enough, that have efficient access to price feeds and can make decisions quickly, and have that liquidity available. Because if you have situations where those stop functioning, then the order books become very thin, and that's when we have huge gaps in prices, and again undermines the whole issue of like price discovery, smoothing out volatility, and all those things. Where options are, essentially providing that as a tool to help smooth out the volatility and price discovery. And market makers are absolutely necessary, to have.
Absolutely. All right. Well, that's our discussion on DeFi. If you guys want to go back and check out, maybe you're kind of hopping in here late, but we had a huge discussion on DeFi and CeFi, so we're not going to touch much more on that. I'm going to move the little arrow down to our column here of NFTs. I'm going to touch a little bit on NFT volume as well. I think Dimitri kind of touched on the market cap of DeFi, but NFTs are certainly a sector that's growing as well. So I got this information from Andrew Steinwald. Now Andrew is probably one of the better people to follow kind of in the space. So I'm going to pull up his article here, and it was on the Bankless Substack. But I'm gonna briefly touch on this as well as some price, or I guess some data feed from nonfungible.com that gives us kind of a look at NFTs. But obviously, we've touched on a bunch of DeFi in this episode, but NFTs, I think, have the potential to kind of blow the top off of users in this space, and I think it's starting to be more apparent to people on the outside that maybe NFTs, could be a thing, and I think they're starting to understand maybe ownership. Maybe it's just chasing, the potential of investment and seeing that 2, 3, 4, 5x. But basically, this article goes on to say a lot of things, but mainly that NFT lifetime trade volume has hit almost 100 million. And that's kind of from the start of trading with CryptoKitties. I think I'm going to pull it up here fully from his article is around 96 million. But as you can see here, it's right now volume in USD over the lifetime of all NFTs traded, $99,719,708.78. So that's kind of an interesting stat. He also laid out monthly trade volume, which is around 2.5 million. Not that much, an average price being $20, and broke down OpenSea accounts as well, around $18,000. $18,000, or 18,000 wallets on OpenSea. So just some stats I wanted to throw your guys' way as far as the NFT marketplace is concerned, and kind of the sector in general. He goes on to kind of break down different lifetime volume of the different sectors, even within NFTs. I think collectibles being the collected favorite, 37 million. I believe virtual worlds, 27 million. Game assets being 10 million. Crypto art being 1.7 million. And then culture tokens and others, including ticketing for events, property titles, digital identity, unknown. So that was kind of a layout of the entire kind of NFT ecosystem from a broad view. I wanted to get you guys that information as the NFT space continues to grow. Along with this, I definitely wanted to announce, I don't know if you can see in the card, but we will be doing a live episode on Thursdays, mostly me, but I'm going to have some other NFT people, people that are active in the NFT space on the episode. If Dimitri wants to come on, if Mike wants to come on and talk some NFTs, they're certainly happy to do so. But that will mainly be myself and other NFT enthusiasts keeping track of maybe weekly news within the NFT space.
So what are you gonna call it? Toys R Us or what?
Yeah, Toys R Us. Toys R Us might be up for
grabs.
It's up for grabs. I think they're filing Chapter 11, so I might be able to snag that for a couple mil. Anyways, the last thing I wanted to do with NFTs before we hopped off here, Decentraland held the first week of their Crypto World Cup. So this is actually a really interesting kind of development within the NFT and in crypto, not crypto, but metaverse. This is one of the first times that I've seen within these decentralized metaverses that you've actually had a large-scale game take place, which having games within games is super important as far as metaverses go, because I think what you've seen on Crypto Voxels up to this point, it's really cool to kind of have for events and event meetups. It's really cool to kind of build. But essentially what you're doing in Crypto Voxels right now is nothing, right? Like I think the art space, while big, as Andrew pointed out in his article, is 1.5 million strong up to this point. And while it's definitely going to be a larger part of the metaverse and NFT play, I would say games within the metaverses are going to be majorly important for the adoption of these metaverses. I think being able to do things inside of the different platforms is going to be more important than just like saying, hey, I have this decentralized world, come and chill, which is essentially what you're doing, on these metaverses right now. I think Sandbox is trying to, handle some of it, but in that MMO and being able to do something. I have it on the one of the things that I was really upset with when I saw this is they have different kits, different shirts for each of the teams. And they have groups. I mean, this is a full-on World Cup.
Oh wow! What?
And one of the things I was super upset about once I saw the T-shirts is that Layer 1 needs to be a part of this at some point. So I'll be reaching out to a couple of the guys over at Decentraland. I know we've talked with them a couple times, but if we can get into this Crypto World Cup, maybe version 2, we'll have our own little kit. Look, they got a non-fungibles kit. It's amazing, man.
That's awesome.
I appreciate that. But that's all kind of frivolous stuff that I like on a general basis. But the importance of having things to do in these metaverses are important, and that was one of the biggest ones I've seen so far, where you actually have a game being played out. It looks like Pong, honestly. It's very rudimentary. I mean, not even like a AAA studio would never come close to that like game at all. But at the same time, it's still good to see.
Yeah, it's interesting, so I look at the video, right? Obviously, the graphics is like, I wouldn't say, falls into my bucket of taste, for the design, but obviously we have like Minecraft that picked up like crazy, right? And the graphics on that is like, really,
yeah,
like, come on, right? So but like, yeah, I completely agree. Like, we spoke to different guests in the NFT space, and they talked about what are the goals there in developing like our RPG games, like, or like leveling up MMO games, like, where you can level up your character, farm, go on raids, do PvP and stuff, like,
yep.
All these things that are like pretty big goals that they're looking to create within, these, like, that we can have maybe in Decentraland or other places. So it is super exciting, but it's like, when, bro, like when, like everybody's asking, like, when can we see this? happen. I'm sure once it starts coming out, like this is interesting what they did, like the crypto World Cup, like how many people are gonna like start cheering, and having different like shirts like you mentioned, and have like crypto like fans that are attached to a single network, let's say, that's
Mhm.
supported, and like it can go so many ways. Like I think it's a great marketing for those guys.
Yeah, we had Yatsui from Animoca Brands. I always go back to that conversation. Like, I just want to talk to that guy nonstop if
Yeah.
it comes to NFTs. And we talked with him for a while, and he said the idea of some of what the ideas of NFTs provide is the idea to have attach history to an item. Where normally
Mm-hmm.
in a game, like let's say WoW, for example,
Mm-hmm.
but there's so many. I hate using WoW because then I feel like people that don't play WoW just exit the video immediately.
Wow.
But yeah, exactly. But like the idea of having history to an item, because now
Mm-hmm.
what essentially you have here is somebody that actually played in this World Cup. If they have the NFT that is
Oh
the
yeah.
kit, that now becomes part of history on the blockchain. Now that not only is that thing worth more, because you can say, hey, this was played in the first crypto World
Mm-hmm.
Cup on Decentraland. Now you can sell that for more. You can have an I don't know how necessarily technically you would be able to sign that and say that it happened, because all you would see is the signature of,
Right.
the creation and trading. But eventually there will be a process where you can say, hey, this was signed. Maybe you have a digital certificate NFT that comes with it saying
Mm-hmm.
you were a member of this first. But what essentially you're doing is attaching history to digital items, which
Right.
never existed before. You bought things, you sold things, but it wasn't, I bought this digital item that was played at on at this crypto World Cup, and that's just a small little portion there. Certainly, I think there was accounts. Like I'm sure you could like sell a really popular account to someone based on like the history of that account.
Yeah.
But that's my spiel. I think that's a big part of the NFT landscape. One of the other conversations I was having with someone about NFTs was the idea that not a lot, and we didn't touch on this with Yacht, but the idea that every single, I think the narrative that people try to push is that every item is going to be digitally identifiable and authentic. And in
Mm-hmm.
order to do that, you need to, and decentralize, that's the key. In order to do that, you have to have the blockchain, right? And you
Right.
have to be able to say, okay, this was created on this date, and you have to, have all the things just like you would with Bitcoin, and identifying that that's, authentic. But the one of the friends that I had made the point that in order to do that, you would cause bloat on the blockchain. So if
Right.
every single
Yeah, that'd be
little
good.
level one item, you know what I'm saying, where they have max supply,
Mm-hmm.
if every item falls under this category, you create bloat on the chain, and that actually could not happen at scale.
Yeah, but that's when you have all these networks come out with scalability, you know, 1 billion transactions per millisecond, like like we ready, man. Come to us, we got you.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
no, that's fair. I mean, yeah, that honestly does. But I guess the I guess proponents of that would say then it's if it's has a million transactions a second, it's not actually secure in a certain
yeah.
type of way. But yeah, I mean we don't need to go down that rabbit hole. But it was a great point. Like I wish we had Yacht and been able to ask him, hey, how do you deal with having each item be an NFT and have all the security that's associated from level 1 all the way to level 1,000.
Right.
And not create bloat on these different chains. But I guess like Polkadot and EOS, and they'll all come along. ETH 2.0.
Yep,
Um,
exactly.
so this has been a great discussion. We appreciate everybody that's followed along. If anybody has anything left that they want to discuss, please feel free to drop it in the chat. This has been a good discussion, Dimitri. You
Yeah.
gonna take some rest? I know you're on a flight
Yeah,
this
man,
morning.
I'm probably gonna take a power nap, because of the travel. I'm feeling kind of jet lagged, but yeah, super exciting topics that we talked about. Lots of info, and obviously, what's gonna happen tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern.
I
If
don't.
you don't know, okay, Dimitri's desk, 5 p.m. Eastern. We're gonna go over the price action interesting price action that we had today and kind of over the weekend. We didn't have an episode this Friday
Hmm.
because of the holidays. But I'm back on the regular schedule Tuesday and Fridays. Dimitri's desk is back in town, so I'm gonna have my office here, as you can see. Super excited, to talk about price action in the market overall. So bring your bags.
Absolutely, and we're gonna have two guests this week that actually are a part of a lot of what we talked about today, which is institutional custody. Ledger Prime is definitely a part of that, as well as Axie Infinity, obviously a huge player in the NFT space. So a great week of interviews, a great week for Dimitri's desk, and we'll see the inaugural launch of NFT Weekly here. Guys, we appreciate you guys following along. I think, obviously what we're doing wouldn't be as good without y'all following along. Please help us kind of get the channel out there. Tell your friends, like the video, subscribe. It really does help us. So shout out to the lads. Shout out to the remaining listeners and viewers. If you want to be a part of the lads community, Telegram links down there, man. But otherwise, that's it for today.
Boom.